tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. So we are continuing with our lectures on Patisambhida Magga. Last time we talked about how the Patisambhida jnanas are attained, and then how they come into purification. And they are attained, there is no noble being who does not possess Patisambhida jnanas, but their wisdom doesn't come into variation just being a noble being. For that there has to be some other factors. So the variation happens in two places. Either it can happen as a sekka or a lower noble, or after someone has become a noble being. So I have shared the same handout which was distributed last time because we couldn't finish it completely. So I'll be moving into page number 2 directly. Moment of attainment. Moment of attainment. We are talking about the miscellaneous facts about Patisambhidas at the moment. Miscellaneous facts. So types of Patisambhidas we discussed, Suddhika and Vedapatta. There are two types of Patisambhidas. And moment of attainment. One attained Patisambhida at the moment of Magga, because Magga eradicates the defilements, especially the ignorance which conceals these true causes and effects and so forth. And after the removal of the ignorance which conceals these realities or the true facts, the mind is capable of knowing them easily. And mind doesn't have any obstacle of seeing them or observing them or analyzing them. And this phenomenon is applicable even when for the Four Noble understanding of Four Noble Truths at the moment of becoming a noble being. For example, at the moment of attainment as a Sotapanna, the wisdom arising in the Magga Citta, the path consciousness, the noble path consciousness, the supramundane consciousness, is classified or is described in the scriptures as fourfold. That wisdom about the suffering, about the cause of the origin of the suffering, cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. But technically we know the object of Maggapala Chittas is the Nibbana, and so it's a unanimously agreed fundamental. So how could the Magga Jnana be classified or be designated as fourfold while it is only observing or looking at the Nibbana, which is the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering? The explanation of the Theravada tradition is it is doing so not in terms of knowing it as an object, not in terms of arammana, but in terms of function. Kicchatho. Function means it removes the obstacle to the wisdom. Removing the obstacles to the wisdom is also considered as an understanding or an enlightenment. Even the word penetration has been used. Penetration or clearly seen the object. All the words that are used to wisdom can be used for this function as well. When ignorance is removed, it is said the person has known the reality, person has understood the reality. For example, now ignorance covers the Four Noble Truths. It doesn't let our mind to understand the Four Noble Truths deeply or correctly. So when the ignorance, the latent tendency of ignorance is removed, technically we can say the person understood the reality, understood the Four Noble Truths, he penetrated the Four Noble Truths, and he got enlightened by knowing the Four Noble Truths. All these terminologies can be used, though the person is directly observed in terms of direct observation, in terms of cognition, only Nibbana is being focused at. Only Nibbana is being focused at that moment. But in terms of functions, he understands, he comes into the enlightenment about all the Four Noble Truths by removing the obstacles. So there are two ways that the two ways the wisdom understands something. That is by directly seeing it as an object, taking it as an object, and the second way is removing the obstacles to the wisdom. And this is also applicable when the Buddha becomes omniscience. It becomes the omniscient being, because his omniscience is said to have attained or obtained or garnered at the moment of Magga. That is at the arising moment of Phala, it is completed. He has already obtained it. The moment of obtaining, the moment he is gaining it is the Magga moment. So omniscience is about all the realities and concepts, whatever that can be known. We normally call them atta, whatever thing that can be known with the mind. So Buddha understands them all. But it's very obvious at the moment of Magga and Phala, even the Bodhisattva does not see everything. He's just focusing on Nibbana. And he's removing the latent tendencies of ignorance together with the habitual tendencies, which are called vasana. He's removing all of them. Then as the latent tendencies of ignorance is being removed together with the habitual tendencies, which we call vasana, or that had been in the mind due to defilements have been there for a long period. So when this is being removed, when the defilements are removed together with the vasana, he finds he has no obstacle of knowing anything. So he can know everything. That's the point. But at that moment, he is said to have understood everything. The moment of attainment of Magga, because he didn't become an omniscient person before his enlightenment, and he doesn't become an omniscient after his enlightenment, because it's very clearly mentioned in the commentaries that omniscience, the attainment of omniscience happens at the moment of Magga, and it is completed with the arising of Phala, and he is a Samma Sambuddha, because we don't have a Samma Sambuddha who is not omniscient. If omniscient knowledge arises at a later time, even for a shorter period, we don't have a person who is a Samma Sambuddha but not omniscient, and we cannot have a omniscient or Sabbanyu, so omniscient person who is not a Samma Sambuddha. So becoming an omniscient person cannot happen before the enlightenment, and it doesn't happen after the enlightenment. It has to happen together with the enlightenment of becoming a Samma Sambuddha with his Arahatta Magga attainment. So but at that moment, our book says that the Buddha understood everything, including Nibbana and all the phenomena at the moment of Magga, while he is attaining the eradicating the defilements. So this understanding is basically about removing the obstacles to know other things like anything. So therefore, even the Patisambhida jnanas are attained while someone is becoming a noble being. So that is a very fun. Four noble truths are understood while becoming at the moment of Magga. Patisambhidas are attained at the moment of Magga, and the omniscience knowledge is also attained at the Magga by a Samma Sambuddha, and it would be completed or accomplished with the arising of the Phala. That is what is mentioned, that one attains Patisambhida jnanas at the moment of the Lokuttara Magga, and at the moment of the arising of the Phala Chitta, one is said to have attained the Patisambhida jnana. He is said to have attained them. Ignorance conceals the Atta Dhamma and so on to the mind. Due to its covering, the wisdom is not capable of knowing the causes, effects and so on accurately. A Putujjana being may know it occasionally, especially a person who is practicing Vipassana meditation should have a thorough understanding about the cause and effect, but that understanding is not complete, because the purpose of understanding something or knowing something in depth is to remove the ignorance about that. So that's the purpose here. Now we want to understand the life and the world, because to remove the ignorance, because as long as the ignorance is there, all the other destructive or unhealthy emotions are there. The emotions are present. So and that leads to the rebirth and eventually the suffering. And in order to get rid of the suffering, what we have to do is to remove the causes that brings forth suffering, and to do that we have to remove the main cause, the root cause, that is the ignorance. So ignorance is the purpose of knowing something deeply, and we also know normally in our day-to-day lives, even in our mundane lives, we study things to get rid of the ignorance and to have a better understanding about anything or something, whatever subject we are doing. So in the same way, the purpose of knowing something deeply and correctly is to get rid of ignorance. So a Putujjana being may occasionally know things, or sometimes continuously know things if he's a continuous, like diligent practitioner, but still his ignorance is not completely removed. So he is not free from the ignorance. So therefore his wisdom is not complete in that sense, because of the remaining of the latent tendencies. So the Lokuttara Maggas arises and eradicates the ignorance which covers the causes, effects, and etc. One attains Patisambhida Jnanas by eradicating the defilements which are obstacles to them. So he is removing the obstacles. That is a very important point. Going into variation, Pabheda Gamana. So how it goes into variation, the Patisambhida, because we said every noble being attains Patisambhidas. There is no noble being who does not possess the Patisambhidas, Suddhaka Patisambhidas. Then the Bedapatta one is not common to every noble being. It happens, seems like it happens at a later stage. It can happen at a later stage, but for some it may happen together with the attainment. That is also possible, because for some noble beings it happens, like for example, take Buddha for example. His Patisambhida Jnanas didn't go into variation at a later stage. Sariputta's Patisambhidas were accomplished together with the attainment of Maggapalas. But Mahamoggallana's case, his Abhiññānas had to be practiced at a later stage. It says in the Vinaya commentary that he didn't possess all the Abhiññānas together with his attainment, so he had to train himself to gain the Abhiññānas. That's a very strange case, because normally we would expect him to have attained all the attainments together with his enlightenment, but that was not the case, because we have a very special case in the fourth Parajika, where his wisdom, his concentration was not very pure while he was practicing after becoming an Arahant actually, while he was practicing to increase, like to attain the Abhiññānas, to develop them. So anyway, so this variation happens at two stages. It can happen while the noble being is still a noble being, still a lower noble being, either Sotapanna, Sakadagami or Anagami, or it can happen after someone has become an Arahant. Going into variation with the Arahantship is very common, because with the Arahantship all the obstacles to Patisambhida are completely removed, because Anusaya, there is no latent ignorance remaining in the person. But the Vasana is still there. It's an obstacle for the omniscience. So as long as the Vasana is present, one cannot be an omniscient being. But Patisambhida Jnanas are capable to attain, to be attained. So it goes into variation in two places. Sekka Bhumi, of some yogis, the Patisambhida Jnana comes into variety while being lower noble beings. The Patisambhida wisdoms of Venerable Ananda Thera, so there are 5 given in the commentaries. Venerable Ananda, household Chitta Gahapati, very famous lay devotee in our Sasana, and he also got a title. He is one of the 2 chief lay disciples of the Buddha actually, together with Hatta Alavaka. Chitta was the foremost, one of the foremost disciples actually. Then Dhammika Upasaka, the lay devotee Upasaka, he was a Sotapanna. Chitta was a Anagami actually. Dhammika was a Sotapanna. And household Upali, who was also a Sotapanna, household Upali. And the female lay devotee Kujjuttara. My memory was Upali was Sotapanna. I'm a little bit doubtful about that. But Kujjuttara was a Sotapanna. She may have been Anagami at the moment of death. Because the story says when they were burnt alive, some of them attained Anagamihood, some became Sakadagamis, and some remained as Sotapannas. So the Samavati's group, who was burnt alive by Magandhya. So Kujjuttara is also one of the foremost among the female lay devotees. Kujjuttara was foremost among the female lay devotees, because that's also another very interesting point, because in our books the 2 chief disciples, female lay disciples, the names are given as Nandamata and Uttara Nandamata. These are the 2 names that were given. But when we come into this is how it is given in Buddha Vansapali. The past Buddhas predicted that Venerable Buddha Gautama's 2 chief female devotees would be Uttara and Nandamata. Then when we go into the 𝐸𝑚𝑒𝐴𝐸𝐸 itself, we find a lay devotee, female lay devotee, by the name of Uttaranandamata. Uttaranandamata is one name in that place. Then Uttaranandamata she got a title because in the Anguttara Nikaya we don't get the title of the chief disciples. Even Sariputta and Moggallana were not named as the chief disciples in the Anguttara Nikaya. They were given their own title. Sariputta was foremost in wisdom, Moggallana was foremost in psychic powers, Kassapa was foremost in expounding the Dhutangas and so forth, Dhutavadi. But chief disciples are not mentioned clearly in the Anguttara Nikaya. But we find that they are the chief disciples. Obviously, they are the chief disciples. Uttara and Nandamata is very clearly given in the text, in the Moolas. But when you come to the Anguttara Nikaya, we find a name called Uttaranandamata as referring to the same person. When you look into it, even myself thought it was a mistake in the tradition. But later on, in some places, I found that the Uttaranandamata, the Uttara or the two chief disciples, they are referring to Kujjuttara. They are referring to Kujjuttara. So her name is Uttara, and she was referred to as Kujjuttara because she had a humpback. So she had a defect in her appearance because of one of the akusala kammas she had done in the past towards the one Pacceka Buddha. She mocked at the Pacceka Buddha, not in front of him, but together in the presence of the other ladies. So she was humpback, and so she was known as Kujjuttara, but her original name was Uttara. So in the Buddhavansa Pali, when we find Uttaranandamata, this Uttara refers to Kujjuttara. This Uttara refers to Kujjuttara. So there is no disagreement or contradiction in the Moola actually. Previously I thought it was a contradiction, but in other places we find this Uttara is referring to Kujjuttara. So Kujjuttara was also, and ironically she was a Sotapanna. So that was the next question that we had. How could a Sotapanna would be given the foremost title of a foremost disciple? Because Sariputta Moggallana were Arahant, Kema Uppalavanna were Arahants, and Hattalavaka and Chitta were Anagamis, because that's the highest stage you can be as a layperson. If someone becomes an Arahant, he is destined to either to attain Parinibbana or to become a monk or to give up the household life. And among the female disciples, we find Uttara and Nandamata. Nandamata was an Anagami, if my memory was correct, but Uttara was a Sotapanna at the beginning. So she might have become an Anagami at a later stage, maybe at a later stage, because she is also said to have studied the Itivuttaka and kept it. So some believe that Itivuttaka is something that was heard from Kujjuttara by Kujjuttara and told to Samavati and the others. So she plays a huge role in our sasana actually, but there are opinions because some believe that Itivuttaka was present in past Buddha sasanas as well. So anyway, there are opinions on that. So Kujjuttara, as my research goes on, it should be considered as the chief disciple, one of the chief female disciples of the Buddha, and she possessed the Patisambhida jnanas. She was one of the who possessed the Patisambhida jnanas, and she might have attained Anagamihood before her death when they were being burnt alive, right? So these are the five. These are the five who attain Patisambhida jnanas at the lower noble stage. Then when in the Dhammapada commentary we find, this is a very famous commentary, if you are interested in, just type the name Matika Mata. It's a very famous story. And she who became an Anagami also possessed Patisambhida jnanas. So in the place of explanation of Patisambhidas in all the commentaries, we find 5 disciples. Venerable Ananda, a monk, at the level becoming a Sotapanna, he had the Patisambhida jnanas. Chitta Gahapati, household Chitta, Upasaka Dhammika Upasaka, and Upali Gahapati, and Kujjuttara. And we find in the Dhammapada commentary another lower noble being who had attained Patisambhidas, and she was Matika Mata. Mahatika Mata, who read the minds of the other monks and who brought or offered food to them as they pleased, as they liked. So she was very instrumental or supportive for the monks to attain their liberation. If my memory was correct, 30 monks or 60 monks, some amount of monks. So she also possessed Patisambhida jnanas. Then Aseka Bhumi, for some, Patisambhida jnanas come into variety while being arahants. The two chief disciples, Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana, great disciples such as Venerable Mahakassapa, 𝐏𝐻𝐼𝐴, 𝐏𝐻𝐾𝐡𝐢𝐬𝐴, they are very famous for their faculty of wisdom. 𝐾𝐻𝐼𝐴, 𝐾𝐻𝐼𝐴 were very famous. Kassapa was very obviously the third disciple, known as the third disciple. And Anuruddha was also another special person with a higher faculty of wisdom. So their wisdom, their Patisambhidas came into variation at the moment of while they are becoming arahants or after becoming arahants, right? So then another point is the ones who had higher wisdom faculty, and extra information for you all. In another place we find in the commentaries themselves, the ones who possessed, the Theras who had higher knowledge about the attributes of the Buddha. It's also a place where the wisdom is evaluated of a disciple. How much knowledge or the understanding one has about the Buddhas or our teachers' attributes. Obviously, Sariputta was the foremost among them, and then Moggallana. Then among the 80 chief disciples, 80 chief disciples are having a far greater knowledge than the ordinary disciples, which we call the Pakati Savakas, the Arahants. Then Anagamis, Sakadagamis, Sotapannas, it goes down, and the Putujanas, and how much they have learned, and also how much they have practiced. Then among the 80 disciples, the great disciples, excluding the two chief disciples, so then we have 78 remaining, because chief disciples are also within the 80. So these 78, within this 78 group, we find the commentary has given 4 disciples who possessed extra knowledge about the Buddha's attributes over the remaining 74. So we have out of the 80 disciples, we have the 2 chief disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana. So they are exceptional. So Sariputta was higher than Moggallana. Then we have another 4. Then the remaining 74 had in another group. So who are these 4? So the Sariputta was foremost, that is obvious, Sariputta. Then Venerable Moggallana. And the other 4 disciples were Mahakassapa, then Anuruddha, then 𝐻𝐾𝐻𝐼𝐴, and 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐴. So they had extra knowledge about the Buddha's attributes over the other great disciples, other than the 2 chief disciples. So they also possess some extra element in their wisdom faculty, and they all possess 4 Patisambhida jnanas. There was no argument in that. So of these venerables, I have just written who are given in the text, like in the commentary. This is exactly almost a translation of the commentary, so that's why I didn't give the footnotes. Otherwise, I have to put the entire commentary as a footnote, because I do skip certain parts, but so these are taken from the commentary itself, especially the Vibhanga commentary and the Patisambhida commentary. And I go to the Vibhanga Mula Tika and Anu Tika as well. These are the places where you can find the information of Patisambhida jnanas. So it can go into variation in 2 places, either in the Sekka Bhumi while being a lower noble, or while becoming an arahant, or after having become an arahant. A very interesting topic, which I'll give it in the next handout, because I have thought to extend this discussion for 1 more or 2 more days, because another very important factor here is in some sub-commentaries. Some sub-commentaries, I'll give you the reference next day, they have mentioned that in order to possess the Patisambhida jnanas, one should have possessed the abhiññānas. It's a very interesting statement. Especially if my memory was correct, it was the Sarath Deepani which has mentioned this, because we can find this in two places where the Buddha's, the Bodhisattva's first proclamation was given, and the declining of the sasana. So when sasana is declining, in the degradation, we divide into 5 groups, and in the first 1,000 years, according to one commentary, there are variations about this information. One commentary, the Patisambhida, in the first 1,000 years, there would be arahants with Patisambhida jnanas. And then we come to the another stage of arahants who have 3 vidyas, like vidyas, the ability to see the past lives, see the dying and born living beings, and also who had the wisdom of eradicating the cankers. Three types of wisdoms. So what the sub-commentators are saying, when someone is possessing Patisambhida jnanas, they are must to possess, they have possessed the 5 abhiññānas, the 6 abhiññānas, because including the asavakkaya jnana. Then when Bodhisattva got the proclamation, he was a Bodhisattva with higher wisdom, not a Saddhādhika or a Viryādhika Bodhisattva. He was a Paññādhika Bodhisattva who had a greater wisdom over other Bodhisattvas. And had he used his intentions to liberate himself, he could have been an arahant with Patisambhida jnanas. He could have been an arahant with Patisambhida jnanas before the 3rd line ends. After the 3rd line ends, before the 4th line starts. Yeah, after the 3rd line ends, before the 3rd line starts. 4th line starts. Then a Saddhādhika Bodhisattva would attain arahantship while the 4th line is being uttered, not before its ending, and the Viryādhika would attain after the 4th line has ended. But both of them, it is said in the commentaries that they would attain the arahantship with abhiññāna, not with the Patisambhidas. Patisambhidas are not mentioned there. Only for Paññādhika the Patisambhida is mentioned. But if one possesses the Patisambhidas, it is an indicator, according to sub-commentators, that he has possessed the abhiññānas. That is another important point. But this seems to be contradicting with the information that we have about the lower noble, the arahant, the lower nobles who possess the Patisambhidas. For in our understanding, Venerable Ananda, as far as I know, Venerable Ananda did not possess while the Buddha was alive, did not possess Patisambhida jnanas while the Buddha was alive. Sorry, did not possess any abhiññāna. I beg your pardon. Did not possess any abhiññāna while the Buddha was alive, but he is reputed, is well known to have attained the Patisambhida jnana. So that statement in the sub-commentary is something to be reconsidered. But what they are saying is, in order to wisdom to come into maturity of Patisambhidas, that's the explanation. In order to come to the maturity of Patisambhidas, the wisdom, the backup of very high concentration is necessary. It's necessary to have a very strong, deep concentration. And concentration is entrenched in the mind by the attainment of abhiññāna, because you have to train your self concentration in various ways, in 14 ways to attain the abhiññānas. And it is an indication that having attained abhiññānas is an indication that one has possessed, one's concentration is very much developed, and that development is necessary or required for the wisdom to come into maturity of the level of Patisambhida. So that's another important point that is not discussed in the commentaries where the Patisambhida jnanas are found, but in other places. The sub-commentators have given this information. So I'll try to incorporate in the next handout and also have a discussion on this, on a deeper discussion on this matter. So there are 2 places, the Sekka Bhumi and Asekka Bhumi, where beings, the Patisambhida jnanas go into variation. Then purification of Patisambhida, how it becomes purified. Now, going into variation is something and becoming purified is something else. Going into variation, it happens because of because of his wisdom and all his past thing and so forth. But it can be purified. This wisdom can be purified. So Beda Gamana and Visada Bhava. Visada Bhava is purification. Beda Gamana is going into variation. So these are two different things. So Patisambhida jnanas become purified due to 5 factors. I may not be able to do all 5 because there's quite a bit of explanation. We'll try to cover as much as possible. So the 5 factors that are necessary that would purify the Patisambhida jnanas are Adhigama. First one is Adhigama. Adhigama is attainment. What is referred here is the arahantship, attainment of arahantship. Then Pariyatti. Pariyatti is the Buddha's words. Studying them would obviously purify the wisdom of Patisambhida jnana of a noble being. Then Savana. Savana. Listening to the Dhamma regularly. Studying the Buddha's words and listening to it. So obviously we used to study it in those days. People used to study through listening, but this is regular listening to the Dhamma talks. And Pariyatti means you are analyzing them, comparing with other portions of Dhamma, and bringing out, like, try to unearth some fundamentals and try to grasp the idea. So this is Pariyatti, study. Then Paripuccha. Paripuccha is the commentaries. Paripuccha. So all these 3 seems to be in the side of the academic side of the Buddhist studies. Paripuccha is commentaries, so giving the explanation or asking questions. There are 2 ways that can be explained. Either you are giving that explaining the Buddha's teachings in detail, or asking questions about the teachings. Then Pubbha Yoga, this is practice. Pubbha Yoga, meditation practice. So these are the 5 factors that would make the Patisambhida jnanas purified. Purify the Patisambhida jnanas. There are another 8 factors, like some are overlapping. I'll also discuss about them. It's given in the commentaries. For an example, studying languages. Studying languages, various types of languages. One who has studied at least, like, the number is given 100 languages in past lives, not in the same life obviously, in past lives. Having studied them thoroughly, especially the Pali, Magadhi language, is helpful for one to attain the Patisambhida jnana. So I will discuss on that on next day. So these are the 5 factors that would purify Patisambhida jnana. First is Adhigama. So these are about the attainments. Adhigama is attainment of arahantship. Pubbha Yoga is being a serious practitioner, not an ordinary practitioner, a serious practitioner in the past lives. So Adhigama is arahantship. Attainment of arahantship means arahanta pala, becoming an arahant being with the arising of the arahanta pala. Arahatta pala arises after arahatta magga, and arahatta magga eradicates all the remnant defilements that were not eradicated by the lower 3 noble paths. So Sotapatti magga eradicates some parts of the defilements, Sakadagami another part, Anagami another part. The remnant will be completely eradicated without leaving any remnant, leaving any subsidies. So completely it will be removed by the Arahatta magga. So all the obstacles, defilements are the obstacles for the jnana. It's not only wisdom, it's not only ignorance. Other defilements are also obstructive, because it's given in the Patisambhida magga itself, if my memory was correct. Ratto attang najanati. One who is deluded, or one who is heated with lust, does not see that reality. Dutto attang najanati. One who is occupied with hatred does not see the reality. Mulho attan najanati. One who is ignorant would not see the reality. It's obvious now when lobha is arising and dosa is arising, moha is associating, there's no doubt about that. But we have to understand that all the defilements are obstructing the wisdom, and especially moha is the foremost among them, and it is the reason for the other defilements as well. But in general, all the defilements are obstructions. All the defilements are obstructions. So all of them are removed with the attainment of arahantship. So if someone has attained arahantship, means there is no obstruction for his wisdom. But in the overall, like a bigger picture, when we take the entire spectrum of objects that are possible to be taken in the entire, rather than saying universe, which are existing or which can be imagined, or whatever that can be known with the wisdom, which we call the 𝐏𝐸𝐸 the obstruction to understand the 𝐏𝐸𝐸 is the vasanas. Vasanas are the habitual tendencies that we possess due to the defilements that had been existing for a longer period, countless, beginningless period. So with the attainment of arahantship, except the vasana tendencies, the remaining obstacles, the anusayas, are removed. So his wisdom has no resistance or obstacle to understand the things. So this is what he said. Adhigama arahatta phala. Patisambhida wisdoms are only one already possesses, become clean with the attainment of the fruition of arahantship. If one has attained the Patisambhida jnanas before, or may they have gone into the variation before the arahant, while being a noble being, like it happened to Venerable Ananda, with the attainment of arahantship, it becomes purified. And also, a statement is given in the Mula Tika of an arahant even, now he has already attained, his past attainment was a reason for his purification of Patisambhida jnanas, because they are pure because of this past attainment. So this attainment of arahantship should be taken not only for the beings who are attaining arahantship, but the ones who have already attained. So it is a cause for the purification. So in the end, becoming an arahant or arahantship is a thing that cleans the Patisambhida jnanas. The reason is that when one attains arahantship, factors opposing the Patisambhida are completely destroyed in him. As Mula Tika suggests, even of an arahant, his previous attainment of arahatta phala was a cause for the purification of his Patisambhida jnanas. Now a nice story is given about Venerable Punabbasu Kutumbika Putta Tissa. Punabbasu Kutumbika Putta Tissa. It's a long name. So this Venerable, I'll not read the story actually, you can read it by yourself. I'll go to the end part, I'll read the end part of the story. With this Venerable, we will call him Venerable Tissa actually, it's a very long name. So Venerable Tissa, he studied the scriptures in Sri Lanka, in Tambapani. Then he sailed abroad, most probably to India. Then he went a long journey and approached, the book says he went for 100 yojana journey, and there were no vehicles those days, and we are not allowed to travel in vehicles driven or dragged by animals, so it was a long journey, traveling for 100 yojanas. And he approached one of the great arahants of the era, Venerable 𝐸𝐸𝐸 𝐿𝐸𝐸𝐸 Mahatera. 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 𝐿𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸. When you go to the Sasana, history of the Sasana, we find this Venerable, who was one of the 9 missionaries sent by Venerable Moggaliputta Tissa under the patronage of Emperor Asoka. So 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 𝐿𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸. So he approached this great Venerable and he learned the commentaries or the explanations of the Buddha's teachings that he had studied in the country. So maybe this has happened after Venerable Mahinda has come, or it may be that 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 𝐿𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 was someone else. Maybe he outlived Venerable Mahinda and lived for a long period. So a Thera who was ordained in the beginning eras of Sri Lankan Buddhism came to there, or maybe that 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 Thera was someone else, maybe someone else. So he approached 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 and he learned the Dhamma under him and explanations under him, and he returned. On the way, now he hasn't attained arahantship. The commentaries doesn't say whether he was a putujjana or a noble being. Nothing is mentioned. Now he came while he's getting in the harbor and getting ready to get on board or to embark on a journey on a ship to come back to Sri Lanka, and he had a doubt about one single word. It's not about any concept or anything. One single word, and he was not clear about that. And obviously, they didn't have books those days, and they didn't have these smartphones and everything which carry the entire Tipitaka and so forth. And he couldn't give a call to his teacher or send a message to his teacher and clarify it. So
he had to go back. And he went back another 100 yojanas to clarify this one single word. It's very interesting. And on the way, he met another householder, should be a rich householder according to the story, and he asked him a question. And he clarified it. The householder became pleased with the Thera, and he offered him a rug, a woven rug, worthy of a woven blanket, a rug, woven blanket or rug, which was worthy of 100,000 coins. A woven blanket worthy of 100,000 coins. So 100,000 or 100,000? 1,000. So anyway, it says Satasahassak Ganaka, 100,000 coins. So it's a very expensive thing in those days, right? 100 Satasahassak Ganaka means 100,000. So, and he took this Kambala and offered it to his teacher and clarified the thing, clarified the Dhamma issue. And he came back. And another very interesting thing is was done by the Thera, Yonaka Dhammarakkhita Thera. He cut this, he damaged this Kambala. Maybe he cut into pieces, cannot exactly say what he did actually. He used a knife and cut it into pieces or damaged it and made it a carpet or something to lie down on the ground, a carpet on the place where he was sitting. This could have been he could have used it to cover himself or to use in cold weather, and it's a very expensive one. Who would damage such a thing? Because his intention was he thought when it was a very, very valuable gift given by one of his disciples actually. It was offered to his disciple, one of his disciples, and he offered it to a foreign disciple actually, because he came from Sri Lanka, and it was offered to him. And his intention was, it says in the book that knowing how we have acted, it means knowing the path we have tread upon, our future spiritual companions who value material gain, because some monks do prefer light material gain. That's a tendency in some people's mind. So they are called Labha Garuka. Instead of respecting the knowledge or the spiritual qualities, they respect the gain. So the ones who value material gain will not think of becoming ones who have memorized the scriptures, Pariyatte Dara, and preachers of Dhamma to obtain gain. This shows that one can choose to become a learned erudite monk in order to satisfy his desires because being a learned monk, obviously people start to praise, and they'll start to give you a lot of gifts. A monk in a forest monastery or a meditator would also be very, very attractive and respectable, but there are less opportunity for people to approach them, and there's not much work done by the person towards the people. Being a virtuous being itself is a help for the sasana and for the entire world, and the people can gain a lot of merits by offering something to him, but he doesn't encounter with the society much. But a preacher, Dhamma preacher, always regularly encounters, and the people get a lot of benefits out of him, because he preaches Dhamma, he gives a lot of new vision, he clarifies the doubts. So people tend to offer and support Dhammadaras, the ones who are learned and the ones who are preaching Dhamma, over the other monks. So if someone is craving for labha gain, it's a good it's a choosing to become a learned erudite monk is a way of satisfying or achieving your desires, like achieving what you intend. So surely if someone has studied the scriptures, memorized the scriptures, and is who is skilled in eloquence in giving the talks, would surely obviously get all the gain that he desires. So he thought, may our spiritual companions would take my act as an example and not choose this path. Just, it is good to be a learned monk. He himself was a learned monk. That's why he could clarify the things. And he was an erudite teacher and a very well-known teacher. Even foreign monks came to study under him. And it's not about the learnedness, that if someone is pursuing this path to satisfy his desires to gain, then that is not it should be condemned. It's not admirable. So he thought, may our spiritual brahmachari, spiritual companions, future spiritual companions, the posterity would take this as an example and not follow the path or study the Dhamma in order to obtain the gain, because I have destroyed 100,000 blanket. I don't know whether you can have a 100,000 blanket these days, because it will be very strange because compared to the value of the money, one coin was very valuable those days. 100,000 coins means it's a huge amount of money compared to these days. So having a blanket of that worth is something very special. So he made it a carpet instead of using it. So he thought that this would be an example. So they will think of fulfilling the noble practice rather than going in search of gain. So then what happened, the story goes, now the time is up, actually I'm supposed to finish. So he came back, the student came back, and then he came to Sri Lanka, embarked on a ship, and he reached another monastery in Dambakola Pattana, one of the northern regions of Sri Lanka. And there, he came to a monastery called Valika Monastery, and that was the time the monks were doing their duty, sweeping the compound. And this monk, being a visitor, doesn't exclude you from the duties of the Sangha. Obviously, the monks would not ask you to do if he's tired, but he came there and he took a broom and swept the outside compound. And another very interesting point, after he has swept the area, the other monks who were in the compound, looking at the way it was swept, observing how it was swept, they figured out this compound is swept by an Arahant. This is a very interesting point here. Now, it shows that becoming an Arahant, there is some kind of outer appearance. Doesn't mean that he is emitting lights and so forth. It can be guessed, or it can be assumed to some extent that this person has attained higher levels in spirituality. Obviously when we are seeing a good meditator who is regularly meditating, we see a difference in him or her over the other beings who are involved in defilements and who is frequently entertaining defilements. So think about an Arahant who has no latent tendencies even. So obviously his appearance and the way of behavior should have a contrasting, like obvious, distinct features in there. So observing this, those monks were not like they knew things. They were learned monks and they were wise ones. So looking at the compound, they thought this must have been swept by a Arahant, not a noble being, even Arahant. Then he approached the monk and they want to clarify the issue, and they asked many questions. And he answered all of them. And they came into the conclusion that this venerable is an Arahant. So now the thing is, how his attainment of Arahantship helped him to attain the Patisambhida Magga, Patisambhida Jnanas, for the purification of Patisambhida Jnanas. Before, in his initial first journey back to Sri Lanka, he didn't accomplish it, he returned back because of the doubt. By that time, he had not attained Arahantship. That's the point the sub-commentaries are bringing. He had not attained the Arahantship by then. Then he returned to his teacher, learned it, came back. Somehow, somewhere on the way, he had become an Arahant. Maybe while studying under the teacher or on the way, wherever place he has become an Arahant. Then while he came into the Valika Vihara and swept the compound, by then he is already an Arahant. So after becoming an Arahant, when many questions were asked, he was able to answer them very, very, very clearly, without any difficulty or any doubt. But before Arahantship, he had doubts about the Dhamma. So this is the point that they are trying to point out, the commentary is trying to point out. So after Arahantship, the commentary doesn't mention that where did he attain Arahantship, it doesn't even mention that he had Arahantship. But while figuring the story, because it's given under the attainment of Arahantship. So obviously we know the person has attained Arahantship, but it doesn't mention when. So he had a occasion where he had the doubt, And another occasion, he answered the questions very thoroughly, very comprehensively. So in between, he had attained arahantship, and that arahantship had helped him to, had purified his Patisambhida wisdoms. So I'll read the paragraph on the third page number 3, under number 1, the number 1, before number 2. Prior to becoming an arahant, Venerable Tissa had a doubt about the Dhamma he had studied. But after attaining arahantship, he was able to answer all the questions that were raised by those monks. This shows that Venerable Tissa's Patisambhida Jnana had become purified due to his attainment of arahantship. That's the point that commentators, sub-commentators are bringing. So next day I'm going to talk about how Pariyatti, Savana, Paripuccha and Pubbha Yoga would help, and also I'll give add another handout on another 8 factors that are supporting the purification of Patisambhida Jnanas, and then I'll go to a discussion on the special point that I discussed, how sub-commentators have explained about the Patisambhida Jnanas and what is the relationship between with the Abhijnanas and so forth. Yeah, so I conclude the lecture, giving the opportunity to forum to ask the question.